Hi, I'm Rachel, and this is my December 2020 page 112 tag. The page 112 tag was started by Sean the Book Maniac a couple of years ago, I think, by this point, based off of a French literary prize wherein they comprised a list for that prize based solely off of the writing on page 112. So none of the context of the works, I think all in fiction, that, preceded that page 112. We have none of the context of the story. And just have to judge the work based on the quality of the writing on page 112 alone. And so it's a great opportunity to do some sort of literary criticism and have some fun. I've been using this tag for most of 2020 to slowly clear my physical to-be-read shelves. I take three random titles out of this Books and Cats mug, and then I go and I pit page 112s against each other. And I should say, in my little handy-dandy mug, I have titles that I've accrued from 2019 and before, and still there's this many in, and not even any from 2020 yet. So there's that. But anyway, I will link to more information down below. I really love this tag. I feel like it gives me a nice chance to do some spontaneous reading. A lot of my reading I plan way too far in advance. So it's kind of nice to do something a little more on the fly. And last month I had a particularly good page 112 tag. The book I chose ended up being my favorite book of the month. So let's hope we have similar good luck this month. We'll see. Okay, so anyway, I'm going to go into it now and pick my three books, starting with number one. Book number one, I'm just going to dig in here a little bit and see what I find. Okay. Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Tien. Okay, well, speaking of Sean the Book Maniac, I believe this was one of his favorite books, and I found it through one of my used bookshop soirees, so I'm excited. It's a bit of a chunkster, but has some good recs behind it, so huzzah! Then we have book number two. The Futures by Anna Petoniak. I know exactly, I'm pretty sure I got this from my library used books store, and it got onto my list, I guess a couple of years ago when it was released, and I think either Book Riot or, some literary, people were talking about this book, and I thought it sounded interesting, so I put it on the list, and then once I found it used, I bought it, and now I'm going to see if I'll read it. And finally, we have a final book for book number three. Just trying to dig around, and I'll keep on jumping. This one just keeps jumping out, so I'll take it. Ice Palace. I think it's Ice Palace and not Ice Place like I put here, but we'll see, by Edna Ferber, which I got last year in the summer for my birthday. I was going on the town back when we could do that with my friend, and we ended up in a small town in West Virginia, and we went to an antique shop, and Edna Ferber was on the mind because well, she was a Jewish writer from yesteryear, so I'd been hearing about her, and I saw one of her books and I snatched it up, and now it seems like I'll have the chance to give it a go. Okay, and I'll be back in just a little bit to read page 112s and give you my thoughts. Okay, and I'm back. Whew, this day is getting away from me. There's lots going on, and here I'm filming on Sunday, even though I'm sure it'll take me a few days to get this uploaded, but I figured I'd have time on a weekend, but anyway, I will stop complaining now and get back to it and read these three 112s. Starting with book number one, Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeleine Tien. He could hear the scratching of their steps, back and forth, around and back. The noise crept into his music, a low bassoon interfering with the bass line. Now here, now gone. Irritated, Sparrow set down his pencil. He picked up the lamp, descended the stairs, and exited into the courtyard, listening. No sound at all. He flung open the back gate. The stranger cried out, making them both fall sideways. Embarrassed, Sparrow took the lamp. "Speak, comrade," he said as gruffly as he could. "How can I assist you?" At first only the wind replied, and then the stranger said, his voice no louder than a sigh, "I am looking for young Sparrow." He was very slight, very short, and surely no one to be afraid of, but still the lamp in Sparrow's hand trembled. "Young Sparrow? What do you want with him?" In the stranger's hand a crumpled envelope appeared. Even in the low light, Sparrow knew the handwriting immediately. It was the very same calligraphy he had gazed at ever since he was a teenager, square yet full of ardor, telling the story of Dawei and May 4th. The stranger shivered miserably and yanked his hand back. He was nervous, but not in the smug, twitchy way of a spy or a jailer. Rather, the young man seemed horrified by the width of the alleyway. "I am he. That is, I'm Sparrow. What do you need, comrade?" The stranger shook his head. "Is that a letter for me?" "I have what you would call news." "Quickly, come inside." The stranger shook his head. Sparrow had to prevent himself from dragging him bodily into the house. "Have you eaten yet? Come. No one will harm you." The young man glanced past him. The shadows were not kind to him. Everything about him was meager and crushed. "I will not come in," he said softly, as if counseling himself. "No, no, I will not. Absolutely, definitely not." So I really liked that. Don't know if you could tell I'm trying to get my, acting chops up here, but there is a lot going on in that passage, We have, of course, sort of a character going through an arc in and of one page where, at first he's like, there's this annoyance outside, whatever, or maybe it's a threat even, and then by the end of the page he realizes it's something else and he wants to talk to this scared guy who has a letter for him, and the guy seems not to be a threat. And going into my knowledge of this book being about China during, well, I guess I should say at least its struggles with communism and how dangerous it can be to, be seen as against the state. It seems like I'm putting into this, I guess, that the stakes are high, but it seems like Sparrow is too, because, he was so threatening, especially, and the man is so scared. And there's just in this, page, there's just a lot of cadence and rhythm. I mean, we start with the music, but then there's the back and forth between the characters who, both kind of want different things. Like, the stranger's scared and doesn't want to, be involved much, and Sparrow wants the letter, and so he's like, come inside. And, it just leaves you with that feeling, of course, at the end of what's going to happen? What's in the letter? So, this was a great page. Book 2 was The Futures by Anna Petoniak. And admittedly, here's page 112, a half a page followed by a part 2. So I'll have to cheat a little bit for this, and I decided in this case I would just go for page 110, which is, the usual scope of what a page 112 would look like for me. So, I'm fine. It's just, I don't know. Ugh. What is it? I don't know. You can tell me. God, Adam, I snapped. This sucks. I'm all by myself, completely alone, everywhere I go. He reached for my hand. Don't say that. You have me. I'm right here. I don't have you, though. I have this lousy boyfriend who doesn't give two shits about me because he's too busy with this fucking lumber deal. Maybe it'll be over soon, Adam said carefully. It wasn't the first time I had complained about Evan's devotion to his work. It can't last forever. I mean, Jesus, the way he talks about it. It's like the universe revolves around this fucking middle-of-nowhere Canadian lumber company, Pacific West Corp. It's so important. They're going to make so much money off of it. They're going to be rich and famous. I can't remember the last time he even asked me how my day was, how work was. None of it. He's an asshole. He doesn't think about anybody but himself. I was ranting, but I couldn't help myself. Abby and Jake, Henry and Eleanor, I couldn't complain about any of them, so my anger funneled toward Evan instead. Westcorp Timber is going to make the Spire more money than any deal on Wall Street. I imitated Evan's voice in a snide tone. People's heads are going to turn. Him and Michael Casey at the top of their fucking world. Fuck all of it. The lights of Manhattan glittered up ahead. We were zooming across the bridge, the East River rippling below us like black velvet. It's disgusting, I added. The torrent wouldn't stop. It's so fucking arrogant. He's saying this trade is foolproof. It's like they didn't even notice what's been happening, how fucked up everything is, how screwed up the rest of us are. I guess you could tell I enjoyed this one too. I got into the rant a bit. I think I have an inner potty mouth that liked, some of that dialogue, although I was remembering I have my own character in my novella who says fuck a lot, and the people in my writing group kept on telling me to scale it back, and woo! There was a lot just in that one page, more than I have in most of my pages anymore. But anyway, anything with that much anger and frustration and resentment is just, compelling drama to read. It was primarily dialogue, but when it did come to some narrative scene setting, I liked how they talked about racing over the river. I really did like that. It was a little confusing at first. I assumed at first that the man she was talking to her was her boyfriend, but I probably would have known better if I'd read the previous pages, and she quickly, explained that away within this page. So I really, I like this, I'm a fan of drama. I believe this is about a couple trying to make it in New York, and so we can see, some of the schisms between them, that, she's feeling isolated and alone, and he's putting himself into his work. Although, interestingly enough, there seems to be a hint in here that other things are bothering her as well, but she can't talk about those things, I guess, with the guy she's talking to, and so she's kind of, heaping too much on her boyfriend instead. So that is intriguing as well. So, again, there's a lot in this. And finally, we have book number 3, Ice Palace by Edna Ferber. If Thor Storm and Sarah Kennedy had been philanderers, or even fairly steady patrons of those early day saloons and line houses, lonely when alone, driven to the false comfort of drink or the fleeting solace of the town women when oppressed, Bertie Ballantyne would never have known Alaska, much less become one of its most respected citizens. Sarah and Thor took a drink now and then at the bar of the Rocker Saloon or the Poke of Gold. But it was known that they were not drinkers. They were polite and friendly toward the girls. They knew the women in the little close-huddled log cabins on Old Creek Road, but no woman claimed them. The two stood apart. Both, to the other citizens of the haphazard town, came and went mysteriously. Baranoff admired the two men, sometimes grudgingly. They sensed that in each there was something distinctive. Not stuck up, though. They don't exactly act like they think they're smarter than other people. Then, wryly, say, but they are at that. Confined, as the Baranovians were by barriers of mountains, water, trackless tundra, and killing cold, everybody's business was everybody's business. News traveled by what was called the mukluk grapevine. Mukluks are Eskimo boots of soft, strong moose skins or caribou. News, then, that travels on foot, silently. They say, they say, they say. They tried to extract news of Sar from Thor, and to verify Thor's puzzling pattern of life through Sar. Each was loyal to the other, though by now their differences were many and acute. Each pursued his own way of life and process of thinking. The men were in direct antithesis. That crazy Svensky goes off alone with his dog team up to the Eskimo villages. They say he's learned to talk Eskimo. He writes pieces about them, they say, when he's up there, and he lives right with them, dirt and all, and eats the stinking stuff they eat raw. Summers back here, he goes out on the salmon season with the boat crews that bring in the big catch for the Canaries, July and August. They say he works like that, summers, so he can do his writing, winters, real scientific writing. He'll talk to you about it if you come right out and ask him, but for all he's good-natured and all, why, you feel he's kind of studying you. He kind of studies everybody, friendly mind, but there's a look in his eyes like isn't only listening to you, he's storing away what he hears. Somebody say he's married to one of those half-breed Eskimo girls, but he isn't as big a fool as that. He's kind of crazy, but he's no fool. So yeah, I gotta say, of the 3 books, I struggled with this one the most. It is very narrative heavy, really thick paragraphs, a lot going on in them, a lot of jumping back and forth between characters. I don't know if I have some bias about the fact that Edna Ferber was writing in a different time with a different sort of writing was prevalent that I'm just not that used to reading, as I primarily do recently released literary fiction. I'm impressed by all the detail. I find this town to be fascinating and, all of these sights and sounds to be intriguing, but it's all meshed in too much together. It's a bit overwhelming. None of the characters, for the most part, stick out to me. Maybe Sar and Thor a little bit, because we're being told that they're intriguing. But overall, this didn't grab me as much. So yeah, between the first 2 books, which one will I pick to add to this month's TBR? And I think I gotta go with book number 1, Do Not Say We Have Nothing by Madeline Tien. There's a few reasons for this. First of all, as I said, I really loved the cadence of this page. I loved the action and the movement, and I'm really intrigued to see what will happen between these two characters. Second of all, it's been on my TBR the longest, so I feel like I have the most impetus to remove it. Or at least I've had this book in my possession the longest of all of these books. Thirdly, it is a chunkster, and I want to remind myself not to be afraid of chunksters. I buy them because I want to read them, and so I should do that. And fourthly, perhaps most importantly, this is the page 112 tag, of course, after all, and Sean the Book Maniac started it, and this is one of his favorite books, so I feel like I owe him this allegiance. So we'll see what I think. There we go. So that about covers it for me now. You can find the Goodreads links for all 3 of these books listed down below. I also have a special little section I'll mention briefly now where I will talk about the TBR games played by members of the predominantly YA BookTube. It's something I've linked in my head to what I'm doing here because it's all about spontaneous reading and I guess bringing excitement to your reading through a sort of game. Their games are a lot more involved than my what I did on this video. But anyway, the one I will highlight this month is by Book Browsing Blog and her Dart Attack game, where she has a dartboard set up with prompts underneath each of the little triangles, and then she aims and she throws a dart at the dartboard. And I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed that she can hit that board as often as she does. I have a feeling I wouldn't as much, but I haven't tested myself, you never know. But anyway, check her out down below. In the meantime, now that I have buffed up my TBR for December significantly, it is time to actually get to these books because I hope to be back here again in time for Friday Reads with enough to talk about, so stay tuned. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.